jump. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the August 8th, 2019 meeting of the Burlington Conservation Commission. After calling the meeting to order, we have citizens' time. Is there anyone here for that? Okay, the record should show no. Next, we have approval of minutes, July 11th, 2019. Any issues at all? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? 500. Next, we have some certificates of compliance. We're on item 4A. We have 5 Burlington Mall Road, Burlington S&S LLC, DEP number 122-607.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jocelyn Meyer, civil engineer with VHB, here on behalf of the applicant, Simon Properties. Some of the comments received last time I was here had to do with, there was a bunch of litter down in the wetland. Simon has gone in, cleared that out. They removed the concrete washout area, cleaned that area up, and then also rehydroseeded all of the bare spots on site. Given the time of year, it's having trouble establishing, and if they don't get any growth, they plan to reseed that again in the fall once the temperatures cool down. But with that, I would ask that the commission consider withholding the bond in lieu of the certificate of compliance, just so we can at least close out that piece tonight.
Okay, thank you for that. John or Eileen, do you have comments, and do you accept the suggestion to the commission from the applicant that we withhold the bond and issue the certificate?
So I was out on the site actually to inspect for the sidewalk project on Tuesday or Wednesday. So I walked through the site to get out there. It was cleaned up. The hydroseed is not doing anything. But the site is basically done except for the germination of that grass around the guardrail area and behind the guardrail. So I don't see any problem with issuing the certificate. We have a $10,000 bond, which is certainly more than enough to take care of any landscaping issues that need to be taken care of later.
Any comments from the commission? Could I have a motion to issue the certificate of compliance for 5 Burlington Mall Road, DEP file number 122-607? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 500. It's all set? Thanks. We'll see you in a few minutes. Oh, well, more than a few, but we'll see you later. Next is a request for certificate 341 Cambridge Street, the Richfield Company, DEP file number 122-593. Okay, have someone here for that one? Nope. All right. All right, Eileen or John?
I just got back. I haven't seen it yet, sorry.
Okay.
So this was a tear down in a buffer zone, the wetlands to the rear of the property, not on the property. The site looked fine. The landscaping was all established. Didn't really see any issues. And I'd recommend issuing the certificate and releasing the bond.
All right, so a few of us were there. Anybody have any issues with it? Could I have a motion to issue the certificate for 341 Cambridge Street, DEP file number 122-593? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor? 500. How much is the bond?
$2,500.
Okay, could I have a motion to release the full amount of the bond, $2,500 for DEP file number 122-593? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Same vote. All right, next we have, we had a site visit at 6 Stony Brook. We have a request for certificate. This is the Litchfield Company, DEP file number 122-585. Someone here for that? Nope. All right. John?
All right, so this one was the one that was in the floodplain, so there was floodplain filling to create the house. There was floodplain compensation to the rear along the sewer easement. That's completed. It looks, the area which was excavated out for the floodplain compensation is growing back. It's out in the woods. There's floodplain on the right-hand side of the lot, which there's a depression there. There's actually water in there, but that's floodplain. They didn't fill that. The owners have not subsequently filled that. The only issue we saw were a couple of standpipes, PVC pipes in the lawn that we couldn't really figure out what they were for. There's no roof gutters. At first it looked like maybe they were constructed for cleanouts for a rooftop infiltrator, but there's no gutters, there's no infiltrator, so.
But they did put stone around the building.
Stone around the drip edge, stone around the driveway.
Right. So, did the plan, do you know if the plan had a infiltrator?
Probably not because of the water table there.
It would have been very
Right.
high.
It wouldn't have worked.
So it's
Yeah, I mean, they're right at the water, they're in the floodplain and right at the water table,
So it's
so.
a mystery what the pipe is. I'm not sure, is it a mystery we need to solve before closing?
No. Oh,
All right.
and additionally, so you required a conservation restriction on the rear of the lot. That has been completed and recorded.
It has been. Okay, you recommending release of the bond as well?
Correct.
Okay, motion to issue the certificate for 6 Stony Brook Road, Litchfield Company, DEP file number 122-585. So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Next, could I have, how much was the bond?
$7,500.
Could I have a motion to release the full amount of the bond, $7,500, for DEP file number 122-585? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Same vote. 2 Wall Street is requesting a release, Newport Harbor Corporation, DEP file number 122-545, and this one is, we already closed on the certificate, so we only have the release to consider.
So this was the paparazzi project where they did their renovations prior to them then selling to Revel Restaurants, who built the other 2 restaurants. So on the certificate of compliance, we actually deleted the continuing conditions because the whole thing was sort of superseded by another order of conditions. You didn't release the bond because the applicant for the certificate of compliance was actually the property owner, Gutierrez, trying to clear up the deed. But at Newport or whoever, the restaurant group who owned Paparazzi now would like their money back.
Do you have any issue with it?
No.
Anybody on the commission have a problem with it? Could I have a motion to release full amount of the bond to Wall Street for DEP file number 122-545? So moved. Second?
Second.
Is there an issue?
Not on that. I just-
All in favor? 500. Yes.
So we have an additional reissue that we need to do. We got a phone call today on the same property, the certificate of compliance for the other 2, the pizza place and the Mexican place. You issued a certificate of compliance for that at the last meeting, I think, or maybe in June, and they've misplaced the original and they can't record it, so you just need to re-sign it.
Do we charge them extra for that?
Sure.
Okay.
Double.
All right.
Bond for,
We don't need to vote it again, do we?
No.
Okay.
how much was the bond for? It wasn't mentioned, I was just going to make a note.
Which bond?
Okay, let's take care of
Paparazzi.
Oh, I can look it up in the morning. I just want to tell Lisa.
Okay. Here's this one to sign. This one to sign.
By the way, that was $10,000 bond.
On that
You
last
just-
motion?
Right.
All right. Okay. There's this one. Okay, and here's the board to put it all back together. All right. Next, we have a request for minor engineering change. It's item 5 on the agenda, 34 Cambridge Street, TMC New England LLC. It was to install a drain pipe, DEP file number 122-615. All right, good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening. For the record, my name is Brian Dundon. I am a site civil engineer with R.J. O'Connell and Associates. I am here tonight on behalf of T.M. Crowley. A minor engineering change to the previously approved site plan as part of the notice of intent application associated with the renovation at 34 Cambridge Street to accommodate CVS Pharmacy. The change being requested for approval is that upon a recent site visit, there is an existing drain manhole that is located along the west side of the CVS building. That drain manhole, what it does is it connects internal to the basement of the building. There are sump pumps that run that has a discharge to this drain manhole. This drain manhole then has a direct discharge to the wetland resource area. During a recent visit, I noticed that this manhole was surcharging water. Upon further investigation, what we have noticed, or what we concluded, was that the outfall pipe that is located within the wetland resource area is buried. So therefore, water is not discharging properly. So what we're proposing to do is abandon the 8-inch drain line in place and then install a new drain line above it, which would be 4 feet below grade. Gravity sewer outlet would be still to the bank. As under the current condition, once we hit the outfall, there'll be riprap stone placed from the outfall down to the edge of the wetland resource area. And that's essentially the change that we're proposing tonight.
Okay. John or Eileen, do you have questions or comments?
Not really. I think Brian gave a pretty succinct description of the issue in this case. The work has been ongoing for the renovation of CVS for several months now. We've been getting inspection reports, and their erosion controls are in place. They've already got most of the granite curbing in place. I have no particular issues with his proposal as it stands.
All right, let's see if the commission has any questions. Gail?
So you're just going to dig a trench to lay the pipe that goes out to the bank?
Yes, there'll be a new trench prior to, one of the last major site work-related items is paving this area in question. So before we pave, there'll be a new trench that's pretty much installed in the same location as where the existing pipe is now.
And you're going to dig this, lay the pipe, and cover it back up again in a day?
Yes.
Okay. John?
No questions.
Ed? Jennifer?
No questions.
Is the discharge of the new pipe, is this in the resource area or in the buffer zone before it?
It is within the buffer zone. The same condition that exists today.
So do you folks have any issue with the protection of the resource area based on this little?
I'll just ask the question I ask every time about the iron in the water.
I do have some additional information on
Okay.
the iron. Unfortunately, it's naturally occurring. What we have found out is that there is an iron-based bacteria in the soil, and when it's in contact with groundwater, any water, it oxidizes. So it's called ferrous. They call it iron ochre, which is ferrous oxide. So what happens is it's a naturally occurring thing, and over time it coagulates and creates a gel slimy type feel. So it's ongoing maintenance. That's some of the occurrence. What backs this up is that some of the sump pump pipes had to be cleaned internal to the building because they were all gummed up, and it's a result of this ferrous oxide is what they call it, or iron ochre, which is a naturally occurring bacteria that's in soil that once it comes in contact with groundwater, it oxidizes itself and to keep itself alive. So unfortunately, there is nothing to alleviate this problem. It's an ongoing issue, and now it becomes an ongoing maintenance issue that we've made CVS aware of, that because we did replace the sump pumps internal because they weren't working. And now we have the reason why they weren't working is that they were all gummed up with this and they burnt out. So that's the nature. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get rid of it.
Okay, thanks.
Any comments from the commission? Where's the iron coming from? Is it part of the iron pipe, or is it in the water naturally?
It's in the soil, and then when it's in the soil naturally, and then when the soil comes in contact with the water, it oxidizes and creates this.
Yeah, rust,
slimy
otherwise
feel.
known as rust.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, interesting. I would have thought it was the oxidation of the iron pipe.
So do you know anything, so this is a bacterium, so do you know anything about whether, this bacterium that once it gets in the water, is it problematic for like wildlife or?
It
Is
is
it
not.
any is it, pathogenic to wildlife? Any causing problems?
No, from what I understand, and it's very broad knowledge of this material, what I understand is that's just naturally occurring. There's no.
Right, but it's in the soil, but you mean it's being dumped through like at probably a greater rate than it normally would because of the runoff from the pavement and the, hitting the soil and the sump pump and so forth. So there's probably a greater influx than there would be in a natural habitat.
There is no impact, there is no impact to the environment. That's what I've been advised by the material that I've read and consulting with the firm that is installed, prepared the.
I was just wondering whether there's enough, if you saw this, John, whether it needs to be any kind of biofiltration or anything before the runoff hits the water?
I don't think there's a way to do it.
The rust was coming out of the broken pipe, wasn't it?
Right.
Where is the soil inside the pipe?
If I may clarify?
Yeah.
You're correct. The water, it's in the groundwater table. It's below the building, below the building floor slab. So what's happening is, as the groundwater is rising below us, it's in contact with the soil. The bacteria is in the soil below the building slab.
Thank you. All right, anything further?
No, I guess the only problem I could see is if it's brown, if it's creating this thing, it create a light problem, but, it's it's not a pristine lake, but.
All right, could I have a motion to issue the notice of approve a request for minor engineering change for 34 Cambridge Street to install a new drain pipe, DEP file number 122-615. So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor? 500. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have a continued public hearing. Item number 6, notice of intent, 46 Westwood Street, Michael and Brenda McCarthy. It's to construct a residential addition, DEP file number 122-628. Got to talk into the microphone.
Sorry about that. Marcus Penny, Land Use Environmental Consultant, back again after the last hearing with Michael McCarthy, the owner. And in brief, we revised the plan as the commission requested to move the building corner back so that now is at 20 feet, 0.3 inches from the closest point of the wetland. Again, we are removing more impervious surface than we're creating. We're moving the pool, which is actually closer to the wetland than the house addition would be. We're also removing the pavement that's in the second driveway, which will actually improve that area. And we're removing a number of minor items here back next to the house. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. We did review the draft orders, and Michael may have some responses on that.
Okay, if there's anything further?
No, not really.
Okay, that's fine. Eileen, does this cover what was requested? Or John, whoever's...
Yeah, I believe it was. The commission had asked them to try to move the house a little further away to get outside the 20-foot no disturb, which they've accomplished.
Anything further we need to address?
I don't believe so.
Okay. We have a draft of a decision here. We're going to review it. You should have a copy of it.
Oh, am I doing it? Sorry, they already had one, remember?
Oh, do I have one? Yeah, I did, yeah, that's right, okay. That's what I did, okay. So the project description is the construction of a 1,000 square foot addition to a single-family dwelling, removal of an existing driveway, removing of an above-ground pool within the 100-foot buffer zone to wetlands, filing history, plan documents. So there is a revised plan which you have dated July
25th?
25th. The wetland values, area subject to protection. So the project is the closest point of the proposed new dwelling is approximately 20 feet from the bordering vegetated wetland. The commission's approving the flagged section of the wetlands. As you can see on the plan, part of the wetland delineation is flagged, part of it is from approximate. So at the rear of the property, you're not approving a wetland boundary, just the flagged portion of the delineation. Discussion of the resource area values and functions, stormwater management, it's exempt as a single-family house project, but they are reducing impervious area, they're removing the pool, the driveway, rooftop runoff for the addition will run into a lawn, and erosion and sedimentation controls will be installed. Other findings, the commission granted a waiver of the 20-foot no disturb and 40-foot no build. Then there's a discussion about that. The commission has a sort of a policy of using structures that require a building permit as the distance that they're measuring as far as pre-existing conditions. So in this case, the pool was considerably closer that they're removing to the wetland than the proposed addition. So in this case, the structure would be further away than the pre-existing condition. However, the commission did find that the existing conditions did not meet the wetlands regulations for 40-foot building setback, and about more than half the area of the new building would occur within the 40-foot building setback. The applicant agreed, increased the building setback from 17 to 20 feet. The applicant is requesting and the commission's granting a waiver of the 40-foot setback. So that's, I don't know. I think you should vote for the waiver either way. Decision, the bylaw conditions include a $3,500 surety. Order of conditions.
Great.
Standard conditions for administrative conditions. Pre-construction conditions are also standard, and they've had these in advance, so hopefully if they have any questions, they can come up with them, but those are all standard conditions, as are the erosion control conditions, which will require state hay bales. Because of the closeness of the wetlands, we probably won't approve anything else, but we do give ourselves that ability in the condition. No dewatering without approval. Pollution control conditions are standard.
May I ask a question while you're reviewing this?
Certainly can.
Would it be possible to use an equivalent erosion control to avoid importing the seed that's in the hay bales and use a 12-inch silt sock? That's a common erosion control.
In this case, would a silt sock work in your opinion?
Very little.
So it really depends upon where the stockpiling is going to be.
The stockpiling of building materials or
For the foundation hole?
For the
for
foundation.
the excavation?
Yeah. So if it were on the left-hand side of the property, you could get away with a silt sock, but if it's on the right-hand side of the property, I'd be nervous.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of, that far ahead.
So we don't really have to make that decision now. We give ourselves the ability in the condition to approve alternative erosion controls. So that can be a field decision later on.
And there's a pre-construction review meeting, isn't there?
Right.
So at that time, you would make the final decision, perhaps.
Yep. Stormwater management runoff, rooftop runoff shall be infiltrated on site. I mean, the addition's in the back, so it's not going towards the street. And there is lawn there, so it should be easy to do. Buffer zone conditions, 45. So this is for discussion, it's up to you, but the draft condition is to restore the wetlands, a 10-foot strip of lawn in front of the naturally vegetated wetland to the east of the house shall be allowed to revegetate naturally and shall be enhanced with 5 wetland shrubs, the species to be determined in consultation with the department. No temporary occupancy permit sign-off shall occur prior to the establishment of the shrubs.
So do you have any question on that?
Yes, thank you. I spoke with Michael briefly before the hearing. We'd like, if you plant shrubs, you're basically providing a buffet for the deer in this location. I think what might give you better habitat value and perhaps more aesthetic value at the edge of the yard would be a native seed planting, wildflower seed planting, or a conservation mix. The hydrology is good there for something that's on the wet side of a conservation mix. There's a number of seed that are available, seed stock that are available. And I think if thinking ahead to the compliance, I've seen it so many times that you spend money on shrubs and you replant them because the deer browse on them. And I'd like the commission to think about using a wildflower mix, native wildflower mix in the 10-foot strip versus planting shrubs.
All right. Okay, so let's get our opinion of our administrator and then the commissioners.
So we'll feed the rabbits instead of the deer.
Yeah. Woodchucks.
It's the lesser of evils, yes.
I can tell you that I've had as many as 8 to 10 deer in my backyard at one time.
You probably have that many rabbits, though, too.
Well, this year there seems to be more rabbits than usual, but they're all over town.
I don't have a problem. That's fine.
All right, so we're trading off rabbits for deer, or deer for rabbits, whatever. Okay,
It's one of the most important decisions you'll ever make.
probably is. Comments from the commission? Anyone want to say anything on it?
So the root structure doesn't play any role in that? Like,
Pardon?
planting the shrubs provides bigger roots, I'm assuming, that protects the area. Am I asking if, obviously you don't think it makes a difference about the root structure of the plants that you're planting, providing more protection?
Well, it's not going to be mowed, and
Okay.
eventually woody vegetation will probably invade it anyway, most likely. It's
Just
right on the
curious.
edge of the woods.
Okay, any comments else from the commission? Okay,
So there is some debris in the wetland, so be cleared by hand or machinery only from the lawn. No machinery shall be operated beyond the erosion control barrier. And then the standard conditions about getting a certificate of compliance.
It's only trash-type debris, not like woody fall downs and stuff like that?
Right,
yeah, just trash is what.
yeah.
Okay. All right, you'll have to let me know what you think that is specifically, and I'll...
I don't even remember it, to tell you the truth.
There's some landscape material,
There were
wasn't there?
lawn clippings, weren't
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
Kind of down on,
On the right side of the
towards
house,
the,
kind of,
I think so.
where the
That was what
driveway
remember
is, I
too.
think. Yeah, I think there was some,
Oh, can I get pictures of
I
it?
think, I remember.
I remember lawn clippings. I mean, if there's tree limbs and things that fall, it's not an issue.
But you shouldn't be dumping lawn clippings there.
Okay, any other questions? If you do, you can always ask for further interpretation from the office anyway.
It was leaves, I have a picture here.
Leaves, right?
Yeah, as in
Yeah.
just you're dumping your lawn debris in the wetland, just don't.
Okay.
Okay. Could I, if there's nothing further, anyone in the audience for this one at 46 Westwood? Hearing none, could I have a motion to close the hearing on DEP file number 122-628? So moved. Second? Second. All in favor? 500. Could I have a motion to adopt the findings under Burlington Bylaw Article 14 for DEP file number 122-628? So moved. Second? Second. All in favor? Same vote. Could I have a motion to adopt the order of conditions for DEP file number 122-628, under Burlington bylaw, Article 14, in the State Wetlands Protection Act.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Same vote. And how much was the recommended?
3,500.
3,500. Okay, so,
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, this whole process has been a very expensive proposition for me thus far. And, I'm just a resident. I'm not, a mall, a CVS. I'm not a billion-dollar enterprise. And I'm not a developer looking to tear something down and enrich myself by doing this project. It's, something I'm just doing for myself. So I understand the need of having that. I'm an engineer myself, and I work in the construction industry, and people are posting bonds to make sure things get done. But, it's already cost me a lot of money to get to this point. I understand that's not a cost, but it's money out of my pocket for a while. And anything that can be done to help minimize that would be appreciated.
all right, comments from staff?
It's your call.
All right. Gail?
Is this typical with a, single-family addition?
It's probably on the high side. It's on the low side for a single-family house. For a single-family house, they generally range from 2,500 to 5,000. We don't get that many NOIs for additions, so it's probably on the high side.
John, any comments? Ed?
No.
Jennifer, any comments?
I think if we can lower it, then we should.
All right, I'd entertain a motion for the bylaw, and you can do whatever you would like, for requiring the posting of a cash performance guarantee of,
So you said the low end was 2,500?
Yeah.
2,500, that sounds good.
Sounds fair based on
2,500,
that.
okay.
All right, 2,500,
Well, actually, what I said was 2,500 is the low end for a house,
House, and this
not
is
for an
addition.
addition.
So like $1,000?
I'd say 2,000.
I'll repeat. Motion to issue to require a cash performance guarantee under Burlington bylaw, Article 14, for 122-628, in the amount of,
It's a one-story
Addition.
addition, 100
I'm
square
not building
feet.
I'm not building a
1,500?
okay,
McMansion.
we're down to
Not
1,500.
going once, going twice.
Going once, twice. All right, is there a motion to that effect? So moved. Second?
Second.
All right, anything further? Okay, all in favor? 500. All right, so I hope it helps you out a little.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, and I think the point was well made that it is an addition and not a house. So I think it was well made. All right, so you're all set. Good luck with your project.
Thank you. Thank you very
And
much.
if you have any questions, contact the office and,
Just one question quickly about that bond. At what point in the project does that get released?
When you get a certificate of compliance, so when the project is done, you apply for a certificate of compliance,
Okay, so
so when it's done.
when the whole thing is done?
Yeah. And who's getting the order of conditions to record?
When will be issued?
Monday.
Okay, Say
it go
say
to
that
you?
again, please?
Who should we send it to? To you directly?
Yeah, please, send it to
Okay.
me
That
directly.
has to be recorded.
Be
Oh,
recorded
it
at
has
the
to.
registry and then proof of recording brought back to the
Okay, so that should, well, all right, well,
office. Or I can, whatever you like.
Let us know by Monday, that's all. Talk about it.
all right, thank you.
all right. Good luck with your project.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.
I can't even usually decide if it's to make for dinner, Larry, so you've really
That was pretty,
persuaded.
that was very decisive. That was very decisive, Jennifer.
We follow it.
Okay. All right, so we got that,
Remember not to
we
invite.
got that, got this, got that, we got that. Okay, so, next on our agenda is item number 7. This is the continued public hearing, notice of intent for 1 3 Great Meadow Road. Town of Burlington, DPW is rebuilding their facility, and it is to demolish the existing structure and construct a brand-new DPW facility. It's DEP file number 122-629.
I can do it. You need to set up. That's two different sets of plans? Gonna have to pretty much regroup this week.
I still looking at them at home, all on the floor.
I did bring some slides, and I'm not sure if you want to just go through our written responses, or if you'd like me to show some slides.
Well, whatever is most efficient for you to go through the changes since the last meeting.
Okay, let me use the PowerPoint then, I think that might help
And
a
I
little
know
bit.
you do well with PowerPoint.
Yeah, and it was excellent.
It's brief this time.
All right, to be appreciated.
Don, I guess we're in the right place,
Help.
Well, maybe if I just hand it to you, you can take one and pass it down without you.
I can do that.
Expeditious.
All right. Okay. Really? Pass the paper.
Sure. That's good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Those have already been recycled.
Hope they weren't maple trees.
All right.
I've got
Yeah, I have extras. You're on 1 through 3 first, right? 1 through 3 first.
So you.
This is 10. Okay.
what does it say, your files and folder?
It through somewhere else.
Can you just hand it on the paper?
These ones?
Just one.
I need one of this too. They're different.
No, I don't need that now. What's the next turn? These things.
Have you extended the display? Have you extended the display?
Yeah.
You did already?
Maybe you should just do it orally.
Oh, Gail,
Well, you know.
how old school?
Well, no, but I mean, you have to be able to improvise if you can't get your technology to work. As I know from many, when it doesn't work, you gotta do something else.
That's odd. Oh, there it is.
All right.
What did you do to get it?
No, that's the problem.
I mean, it was on video before, now it's on HDMI.
Okay, good job, John.
Okay,
All right, please go through introductions of everyone that's here, please.
sure. My name is Jeff Alberti, I'm Vice President with Weston and Sampson, and with me is Tony Westpizer from Weston and Sampson, one of our project managers.
Good evening.
Good evening. So what I thought I would do is try to follow along with the supplemental information that was provided, and I did provide a couple of slides to help us. in explaining the changes that were made. And the primary focus was, with the slides, was not to go through the whole project again, but to really just focus in on some of the changes that have been included. So in the supplemental information that was provided, on page 1, we provide a summary of the revised sheets, and we provided a general description of each of the changes. And I'm going to skip. Yes,
This is the thing that says supplemental information too?
correct. Supplemental
Got it.
information 2,
Fine.
dated 8/7/2019. So the page 1 of that document lists each of the sheets and then a general description of some of the changes. And following that summary, we provided some more details. And I'm going to just start walking you through the items beginning on page 2, which are generally what drove the changes to the plans. One of the first items is during the site walk that followed the last meeting. There was a site walk on July 11th with Conservation Department staff, as well as Weston and Sampson staff, to just confirm the flags. And what I'm
To clarify, the site walk was after the July 11th
Sorry.
hearing, so the site walk was not on July 11th. I don't know what the exact date was, but it was a Monday morning when you folks met with Mel out there, I believe.
So during that meeting, there was a process of going through to determine if the flags that we had identified and originally located were proper. And I've indicated those. You can see in the bottom right, the original top of bank limits were identified and initially were surveyed with GPS. Through that process of walking the site, we did come up with some minor modifications to the location of those flags, and those were flagged, and ultimately, we had a survey crew go out there to come up with the new limits as shown. And I've superimposed those limits, which again were based on that field visit, as well as were surveyed, and those are shown in red. And there are some minor variations, and I've just circled those in black on your screen to show you some of those areas, beginning on the left with some areas where the wetland flags were slightly closer to the site. And as you move down and more to the right, you can see there was one area where it did jog out a little bit further. So through that process, we updated our plans to reflect those. This shows you the overall proposed plan that was reviewed at the last meeting. Again, the solid red represents the top of bank, and then I've just added the 20-foot no disturb, and one of the other requests was to include the 50-foot no build, so we've shown those on the plan. So the survey points just came in today, so there's an updated plan with those. But we found that the GPS and survey were very close. In fact, a couple of survey points we found were further away from the site, but again, a very slight variation. The biggest variation was a result of some extra flagging that was identified during that site walk. So that's been shown on the plans.
But let's just take a moment and if there's anybody has any questions about the flags or anything? Anyone in the commission? We all set? Okay. Just figured, why don't we just sort of do this so we don't have to jump back and
Sure. So that was the first item that was discussed on page 2. The next item on page 2 through this process was an update to the alternatives analysis. So that was included in our package, and that was identified as, bear with me, attachment 2 to the package. And essentially what we did, based on the recommendations of the commission, was our first analysis was more of a summary, but our presentation included the details. So we took that detail and incorporated that and created a more comprehensive
do you address
alternatives
the
analysis.
4 criteria for doing alternatives analysis?
Correct.
Okay. That's,
We
it's
didn't
important you
focus-
have that documentation as we talked about last
Yeah, I
time.
think that's great to have.
Okay.
We didn't focus a lot on costs, although some of the alternatives have costs. I know that if you try to use that as a primary argument, that doesn't, in our opinion, and I'm sure in the commission's opinion, shouldn't be a driving factor, but it was really based on the other factors. There was a question at the last meeting about the current LSP of record. We did confirm that Nancy Nevins is the current LSP for Rue Associates, and she took over for Jerry Velasco. Am I pronouncing that right? When he relocated to Texas, but Jerry's still involved in the project. So we just wanted to provide that confirmation that the LSP of record was still.
Could we ask any questions on that? We asked for that last time. Could we ask why the LSP of record did not issue the opinion on infiltrating as opposed to Dr.
Ball? Oh, no, that was Bonilla. Dr. Bonilla.
If I may, on that particular question, John Sanchez, the Bureau Director, part of the work that we hired Western Center to do is not only to design and oversee the construction of this facility, but also to take over the LSP and all the work for remediation on the site, so we can actually move into that direction when we complete this facility. So for the time being, the two companies are working together, but at the end, through this plan, we're going to address whatever issues we need to be addressed for the long term. And this is why we had, in fact, they'll be working together in a way, sharing data and whatever they find on exploratory wells, et cetera. But that's why we're going in that direction, because that's how we want to be able to finish this project.
So is your LSP going to become the LSP of record?
Yes, that's the intention.
Oh, okay, so he'll
Yes.
submit a change to DEP.
Correct.
Got it, okay. All right, got it. That's more logical, thank you.
And that's actually to the next item where he has gone through and we have done additional sampling and based on his professional opinion, they're not recommending that we infiltrate, which was one of the questions at the last meeting. So we
All right.
provided that letter.
Okay, so let's take 1 minute here.
Sure.
John or Eileen, do you have any comments on that letter that we got?
No.
Okay. How about from the commission? Anybody on the left? They're recommending no infiltration, which is sort of standard practice. Okay, I have a couple of questions. Maybe 1 or 2 questions should be referred back to the LSP.
Okay.
Rue Associates did sampling in, let's see, did sampling in 2013. There was no mention of chlorinated hydrocarbons. And then in 2018, I think Rue Associates did some more. There was no mention of chlorinated hydrocarbons in their stuff. I was wondering why. I mean, it just sounded odd that it got brought up by your LSP and there was nothing,
Are you referring to the PAHs?
no, the chlorinated hydrocarbons.
Okay. I do know from speaking with the LSP that the site historically has had instances where they've identified the chlorinated solvents in the testing, previous testing. So everything that we've tested and come up with through the testing lab has indicated that historically that those materials have been there. Whether it was identified by Rue in some of those follow-up samples could depend on where those samples were taken as opposed to where we're taking ours. But what we have done is verified those with the most recent sampling and identified those contaminants.
So the most recent sampling is the sampling that you folks did,
Correct.
and it was overseen by your LSP,
Correct.
and they found three species contaminants are above groundwater 1 limits.
Correct.
Okay.
That's consistent with historic information that we found through DP searches.
And were those samples from that well that's right in the middle of the site?
Yes.
All right, so it's not as if they're off to one side, it's sort of like right dead center.
Correct.
Okay, so I just have one question. I mean, let me try to express it. At this site, sometimes there's, at this location, or in the whole area, there's various stratas of water, silt, water, table, bedrock, and stuff like this. Is this stuff at such, the chlorinated hydrocarbons being so historical, at such a level so deep? And if it's a ridiculous question, your LSP can write that down if they want. But is it so deep that if you are infiltrating right near the discharge into the stream, it's not going to go very deep. The infiltrators would be like 5 feet. So is it really going to impact where the chlorinated solvents are? That's my one question.
Sure. Actually, I think I might be able to answer it. Certainly, I can get more data if you need it.
Sure.
In our recent testing, what we installed was a shallow monitoring well, so we did not go with a deep monitoring well, so we were grabbing samples from an area that would be impacted through the infiltration, which he summarized in his recent data paragraph. So he did indicate that it was shallow.
So it was a shallow monitoring well?
Correct.
You know how deep roughly?
I don't off the top of my head. It's probably 20 feet, I'm going to just estimate, but that's just my.
All right, so mounting the infiltration water would push it along.
Correct.
All right, I'm fine with that, thank you. You don't have to get an answer.
All right.
Thank you for that answer, I appreciate that. Okay, let's continue.
Okay. Moving on to page 3, there was a discussion on providing a landscaping plan with some trees and native planting. But before I jump into that, and before I get off of this particular item, and this might be going a little bit out of order, but I try to jump around a little bit. You can see on the left-hand side the yellow box rectangle. That represents the generator as we presented it to you, and there was a question at the last meeting about what can you do to get that out of that area, get it away from the wetland, maybe get it out of that 50-foot no-build. So we did spend some time with our team, and so what we've done is taken that area that's shown and essentially shifted that over up against the building. And what that allowed us to do was to turn that back into impervious surface, so we reduced the impervious area. So I thought that was actually a better location. So I appreciate you guys making us go back, or asking us to go back and look at it, and we feel we have a better product for the town, and it also is a benefit for.
That animation was pretty cool, by the way.
So moving to the landscaping plan, we have provided one. It was in the package. I've just highlighted in green the areas showing where the vegetative areas are. And there's a couple of points that I just wanted to make. Number one was, there's an existing tree that exists over across the street in the parking area. There was a request about, can we save that tree? We took a look and tried to come up with some reconfigurations of the parking lot, ultimately made the determination that it was not in a suitable location, so we did not want to save that. We also did speak with our landscape architect. He took a look at the tree, and it's seen some significant pruning over time, if you've seen it out there. And which really makes it somewhat of an unhealthy tree based on the conditions. But
Because of the power lines, right?
Yeah, because of the power lines, right, the overhead wires. And as a result, we were asked through the process to plant up to 10 trees, and because we were taking out that one tree, we added another 2 typically. In that case, we wanted to increase the amount of trees. So scattered around the site, and you'll see in a yellow, just to help you see it, you can see where we've added trees, up to 12 trees, in addition to the other landscaping associated with it.
Could we take a moment here, and since we're talking about green space, and let's take a moment, and it seemed like the information you presented last time says that a path in back of the facility is not particularly feasible. So let me first ask, John, do you still believe that putting a path in back of the facility is probably, given the environment, is not feasible and not reasonable?
It would not be optimal. I mean, I don't think it would be a visually appealing place to walk, number one.
Right.
You'd be right behind a building, and you can't really see the wetland to the right because of the density of the vegetation. So,
Right, that's what was said last time.
Right.
Right. So you would sort of agree with that. I think these folks hold that position. Okay, you folks do hold that position that would not be optimum to get a path in there.
Yes. Yeah, we looked at that, and we do not recommend that.
Okay, so let's take a moment and talk about the other side for the commission to consider, and I'd like to again now go to John. We talked about a bird watching observatory, and there is some DPW property that goes along that area where the dog pound's going to be, I think, and so forth. So we do have a concept of a trail, and when we have an opportunity, we'd like to, as a commission, either push the applicant or make a site adjustment so a trail can be put in there. So, John, could you comment on looking at the other side for both the Nature Observatory and perhaps a little bit about a trail and how it might fit in?
Okay, so there's a sidewalk on the side of the DPW facility, and there'll be a crosswalk to get to the employee parking lot. So the employee parking lot would be available presumably to the public during non-DPW hours, so that could be a good place for people to park. It's a short walk down to the wetlands from the parking lot, so a short trail with some sort of platform out there would be.
Down for where? Could you repeat that again?
So
Where?
to the top, I guess, is this oriented to the north?
North is up.
On the top?
Yes.
Yeah, so to the north of that parking lot, where the Great Meadow is, there's a strip of woods, probably 20 feet. Let's see, so where are we? Yeah, so the arrow is the crosswalk?
Yes.
Yeah, roughly where the new crosswalk would be. So, yeah, so that's the employee parking lot, and then beyond the parking lot is a wooded area, and then beyond that is the Great Meadow. So a path through there to some sort of platform or something. So it would be like a spur off the walk.
The trail would be through the woods? to the-
Yeah.
and then
But it would be like a spur off the sidewalk essentially.
Would it go to those buildings up, behind those buildings on the left?
There's not much room. It's really densely vegetated, and the wetland comes up really close to those buildings.
All right, so here's what I'd like to ask, and, Mr. Sanchez knows I've been talking about this for a while now. If you could take a quick look at what at least is feasible, and whether this became part of that project or some kind of a concept. Going to ask if you just take a look at that as part of this process. I think it's a small ask, because we've talked about the bird observatory for a while now, and maybe a small path. If it could be somehow proposed and constructed as part of this project, that would be the best of all worlds. If it can't, but maybe you could take a look at it. We're just hoping to take a quick look and see what you think, and ballpark an estimate of what it might take to make something nice. It would get us a little further down the road,
Yeah, we
perhaps.
certainly will do that. I'm not sure what the bird observatory is, because I'm not.
It'd be
familiar.
just a deck that people could stand with binoculars and look out over.
It's not a tower.
No, just a deck.
No, nothing.
I've seen those in the woods, so.
Just a platform, really.
That's for shooting deer, I think.
Okay.
It's more like a platform with a railing around it,
So
just
that's
a,
just, we certainly will look at that, and we'll need permits, all right, to build that too. So,
yeah, but,
So perhaps something we can look at doing, not necessarily with this project, only because of the permitting process. Because that means that we'll have to survey, redo all the work again to figure out what we need to do, but it's something we certainly will look at.
if you could
Yeah.
sort of commit to helping us do that, it would be great for the community.
And I fully understand that, so.
Okay.
certainly we'll seriously look at that.
Thank you, John. All right, so perhaps you could scope it out a little bit and just, at least as a concept, and
Sure.
tell us what you think?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Commission, have any issues, any further to add to that? Okay, all right, please continue.
Sure. Next on the item, page 3, we talked about the management of catch basin cleanings and street sweepings, and what we determined just through a verification process is that we do not intend to store street sweepings and catch basin cleanings at the Great Meadow Road properties. They'll stay at the current site with the salt shed on Grant Ave. There was a request to just clean up the drawings a little bit with regard to compost filter tubes. They will not be used for erosion control. Rather, they'll be hay bales and silt fencing, and we've gone ahead and made those adjustments to our notes. And there was just a discussion about cleaning up some language on fertilizer and sodium chloride, which has been done.
Okay. All right, John or Eileen, do we have any other issues or anything else people would like to bring up?
They're not done. They still have.
What?
They still have things that they're.
Yeah, actually,
Oh.
there's still a few more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll quickly go through it. I've touched on a few of them. On page 4, there was a request
Yes.
for notification of spills to include the Conservation Commission, Conservation and Health Departments.
Yes.
That has been updated. Already touched on the generator. I know it's jumping a little
Yes,
bit out of
yes,
order.
yes.
The tree in the parking area we touched on, as well as the sidewalk issue. We talked about
Yeah.
that path. On page 5 was trash and debris, request that the area be cleaned.
Could we go back one on sidewalks?
Yep.
Is everyone here aware that on Meadow Road, that once you get past a certain point, there are no sidewalks? Are we aware of this? I mean, conservation is not the place to, is there any plans to do something about that? That you are aware, I'm not saying this is part of this project, but,
So in general, the town does have a plan and also a sidewalk committee that has been working and prioritizing where sidewalks should go in the town. So we have a rebuild plan, which is what we currently have in place with $1 million town meeting approves every other year. But there's also another program in which we're closing some of those gaps. Terrace Hall, in fact, is going to be the next gap that we're going to be closing where there's a section with no sidewalk. But as we have sections with no sidewalk here, we have a lot of other places in town as such. So we do know that this is part of an area that needs to be addressed.
you accept that it's a significant safety issue if you have people trying to walk down Meadow Road to get?
I don't want to say that people should walk over there, other than there is no sidewalk. And the sidewalk, that pretty much ends after this property ends. But there are many places in town where we have the same situation.
This is a significant safety issue. I looked at it and said, you're going to have a new facility with a whole bunch of people located at that number 10, and they're going to walk down possibly to the mall or something like that to get food?
So is Wheeler.
What?
So is, whatever that road is behind the, where Market Basket and whatever that stuff is over there, and the H Mart, the.
Yeah, but this is our major cut-through to go.
Yeah, but this is where a lot of
Yes, and
people live
I
and
will
walk.
agree on the issue of the sidewalks that are needed in town throughout. We'll be happy to build them with, with available funding. But the one thing that I said, actually at a different meeting with a different committee, is that it's very highly, extremely unlikely that any of our employees are going to walk from any of these places to the mall, of any other places that there are. So typically, if they move from, the locations are not as close by as they seem in a plan. They are really far apart.
Wendy's then?
Bring your lunch.
So,
I've actually
but
never
we
seen
are
anybody
aware
walking on
of
that
that,
street.
yes. The fact that sidewalks are needed here as well as many other places.
Sorry to digress, it's just, it was been on my mind for a while that that was a
No,
safety
we're
issue.
very well aware.
Thank you. Okay, please continue.
Sure. We talked, I'm not sure if I actually said it or not, trash and debris. So we're planning on having the trash and debris that was observed when we were on site cleaned up as part of this project around the perimeter of the site. We did make a change to the storm scepter unit. DEP only credits the storm scepter 450i, so we've made that change. Doesn't really affect our overall design. It's some discussion on low-impact development. We're achieving that through minimizing disturbances to the existing trees and shrubs, using the underground treatment system to minimize those disturbances. We showed you the landscape plan to improve on the native plant species around the perimeter of the site, as well as the cleanup that I just mentioned. And then finally, double-sided printing. I guess we wrote down everything you said, and I think we submitted, hopefully, double-sided printed. Yes, I'm hoping.
Okay.
So
all right.
that was it for
Okay.
1-3 Great Meadow Road.
All right, so this is, okay. Do you have anything further, John?
So, just one thing. So I asked for more of a clarification on the alteration of Riverfront area. Because on the NOI form, it says that the Riverfront area alteration is 98,000 square feet. And the DEP comes out with a form that says, issues the file number, and they usually comment on projects. They commented on 10 Great Meadow Road on the 450I. There were no comments on this project, which makes me nervous. And it says 98,000, the one comment was 98,000 square feet of riverfront alteration, which on the face of it is not permittable. But it's because you're not actually altering 98,000 square feet of riverfront, because part
This
of
is
it.
this is disturbance of 98,000?
Or, yeah, well, the regulation calls it alteration, but it's already altered, it's already disturbed area.
Right.
So, have you given these supplemental materials to the DEP regional office?
I believe they've been submitted, I'll confirm
Okay.
that.
I'm trying to find out who the analyst is,
I-
to make sure that they're not like sitting there waiting to appeal this project, you know. It's kind of unusual for a project like this to have no comments from them. So, so it's just got to be clear to everyone that the amount of, what the actual amount of riverfront alteration is. And that alteration is the area that is currently not degraded that will become degraded. And the area of riverfront restoration, which is the area that is currently degraded, i.e. paved, that's being converted into a permeable vegetative area. So it's nowhere near 98,000 square feet, but when you look at this notice of intent form, your eyes pop out, like, you know, you're only allowed to alter, you know, 5,000 or 10%, whichever is greater, and you're way over that. So, but you're not actually doing that. So, some of your diagrams kind of show it, but I'm not really sure the narrative does it clearly.
John, I don't know if this has any bearing on what you're talking about, but Regulation 5F, 58-5F, when an applicant proposes restoration of on-site degraded riverfront area, alteration is allowed at a ratio of square feet of at least 1-to-1 of restored area to area of alteration. Do they have to demonstrate that 1-to-1 ratio so that they don't get called on it by DEP?
What's that, say that again?
I'll read it again. When an applicant proposes restoration on-site of a degraded riverfront area, because you're doing some restoration, right?
Correct.
Okay. The alteration may be allowed, notwithstanding some other above criteria, at a ratio in square feet of at least 1-to-1, which is the restored area to the area of alteration, not conforming to the criteria. In other words, you can only disturb as long as you're restoring, at least 1-to-1, it says.
I'm not sure. I'd have to see where that fits into the rest of the regulation.
Yeah, could I ask you to take a look at that?
Yeah, what was the section, if you don't mind giving me that? again?
Sure, it was 58, 5F. You know, maybe it doesn't apply because this is a redevelopment. I'm not sure if that's the case, but could you just look at that? And if it's something you need to address, you may want to know about it before DEP addresses it, perhaps.
Sure. John, is there a suggestion that this package should be going to the DEP, if it hasn't already, do you want us to add anything to clarify this point? Do you feel beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, I just think a table that shows the area that's actually already altered and in describing that area. So alteration in the regulations is either the buildings certainly is altered, the paved area is altered, but there's areas on the site that aren't paved, but that have no topsoil. So under the regulations, if there's no topsoil, that's considered already altered.
Right.
So you have to add all that area together,
Sure.
and so that's not really riverfront area you're altering.
Yep.
It's already altered.
Right. So we'll put together a table, we'll submit that to you and to the Conservation Commission. We'll also include it to the DEP, and maybe I'll send you a draft to make sure it's what you're thinking, just to make sure we're on the same page. But I agree with everything you said. Everything out there is disturbed, and we're improving some areas, and so we'll get that cleared up through a table. I think that should
Yeah,
work.
and you'll look at that regulation to see if it applies?
Yes, I'll look at that regulation as well.
Please do.
Yep.
Also, John, anything else? The commission have any other issues that came up?
There were some questions about the bulk storage area, how that was going to be designed to prevent runoff from there into the wetlands or clogging the, drainage structures.
Yes, so we looked a little bit at opportunities to either cover it, which really aren't appropriate for this particular area, especially within setbacks. And we also look closer at the material that are going to be stored there, which is primarily clean materials that shouldn't have a significant ability to run off. But what we're essentially proposing is that we level off those areas so that you don't have water that's hitting it and immediately running out, so that it gives it a chance that if there are anything that is suspended, it'll remain within the pile. But there's really not another significant way to improve that we have come up with at this point.
And it would just be a problem in terms of like vehicle traffic, if there was some kind of curving or something, that if things did drain from it, they would hit the curb and get caught there to be cleaned up rather than running across.
Yes, we actually talked about trying to potentially berm it. The problem is that there are front-end loaders that are moving that material, which would quickly rip that up and create more of a problem for it. But we are looking to keep it more in a level situation so you don't have stuff just running straight out.
Yeah, I don't know if there's such things. I wonder if just in practice, when there's going to be a storm or something like that, like a boom, like that they, put in the water, some kind of temporary, I don't know if there's anything like that you can stretch across to kind of reduce runoff on those kind of events. I don't know if that's practical or not. And the generator, is there going to be fuel stored there
Yes,
on the pad?
yes. Double wall tank, pad mounted just below the generator.
One question on the landscape plan. So the area behind the building, it says loam and seed, is that going to be mowed, or?
I think it's going to be just left to a natural state. I don't see any reason to be back there mowing.
That would be nice to be put in the actual maintenance, so that it's written somewhere. We can refer to it if there's a problem.
Put in what?
Have it actually in the, the operation and maintenance plan, so that in case there's a problem, you can refer to it, rather than just verbal.
So we'll add that to the operation and maintenance. I think
Right.
that there should be some periodic cleanup so you don't have it getting out of control with weeds and, yeah. A lot of times we'll recommend once or twice a year at the most if it gets to that point.
I think there's a problem there, though, especially next to the wetland, especially what time of year you're doing it, because there could be, I don't know if anybody's going to nest there, but, that's the problem that happens in the power lines and stuff.
It's probably just going to become knotweed or Phragmites, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing, there's just one other thing. So the sweeping plan was for, it said primarily in fall and spring. And I, get that in the wintertime when things are wet, it's hard to sweep, but it just seems like there's going to be a lot of stuff brought in there, with trucks going in and out, picking up materials to sand the roads and stuff, that there's going to be a lot of material in there during the wintertime, that it would be nice to have more frequent sweeping.
Yeah, and this is, I know the maintenance plan will say that, but even currently, the way we do it, the sweeper is stored at this facility, so as they come in, if there are any type of spills, they typically, even in our site that we currently have, they will sweep it. It's just like a normal thing that they do. For the plan, I think it says spring and fall is a minimum, but it's something that we routinely do. Throughout town as well, but being that this machine is stored here makes it a lot easier for us.
And the dumpster, is that just for, what kind of waste goes in there?
Just waste associated with the operation, not a special.
I have to add to that, because the only thing that we do is, if unfortunately people do drop stuff on the side of the road, we keep one dumpster for picking up whatever we find.
So it's mostly solid stuff, kind of?
Oh, yeah, this is solid items.
It's where the stream cleaners bring their trash to.
Huh?
Our stream cleaners bring their trash there, too.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else on the commission, comments that could occur to you? I have two regulations I'd like you to perhaps respond to. One you might be able to do verbally. 58-2A. This talks about proposed work within a 25-foot riverfront area. I don't know if this is an issue or not. It says structural stormwater management measures. I was thinking of the discharge from one of the outfalls. shall be allowed only when there is no practicable alternative within that 25-foot zone of the first 25 feet of the riverfront. Okay, so you don't have to respond now, maybe you can just look at it, and if it's not an issue, then it's not an issue. You can,
Yeah, you're talking about the outfalls.
right.
Yeah, so we did actually, I've been pushing these guys on that one for months, and they've demonstrated through the basic stormwater calculations in the inverts that that's the best that we could do. Anything further would actually result in having some of that stormwater not go through the system. So it's all driven by the inverts primarily from this site.
Could you give us a written response so it's for the file then?
Sure. Responding to that, okay.
That would work and cover you in case DEP reviews the file in detail. They'll see that note. And then the other regulation that I wanted to ask about, it's the last one I had a comment about, is 50, I think it's 58.5A. Well, it's under redevelopment of Riverfront, and I'm just not sure about the 58, but you'll know where the redevelopment section is in the regulations anyway.
Yes.
It says 5A, it says at a minimum, talking about redevelopment, the proposed work shall result in an improvement over existing conditions of the capacity of the riverfront to protect the interests identified in the Wetlands Protection Act. Have you articulated that sufficiently in your materials that at a minimum, the conditions, the capacity of the riverfront is improved because of this project? What you're doing?
I believe we have. I think we have that in several locations, talking about the treatment of the stormwater, restoration of some of these areas. I think we have that throughout, so I'm comfortable that we've addressed that.
It's not so much the stormwater, it's the capacity of the riverfront to protect the interests. And, the 7 interests of the Act, which is flood protection and filtering water and all that stuff. Put it like this, could you take a look at it? If it's covered, you can just point to where it's covered.
Sure.
And if it's not covered, you can add a response, and that will be it.
We'll just add the response. I think we'll extract the information into a simple memo, that way you have it. And
That would be good.
we could do that.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. That's all I have. Anything else, Judith?
One last thing, so there was a question last time, so did you submit or contact the National Heritage?
Oh, yes, we did. We got a response back saying that we do not need to file.
Which I think is a little absurd,
What?
but I think that's a little absurd on their part, but whatever.
Yeah, because of fish this.
Okay. All right, just to check, is there anyone in the audience for this that wants to make a comment?
Do you mind if I add one last thing? I just
Of course not.
skipped
Go
over it.
ahead.
We did include attachment 1, which is our waiver request. I just want to make sure that I mentioned that was part of that package.
Right.
A waiver for the 20-foot, no disturb, and 50-foot no build.
Okay, and the areas where, on your drawing, the 20-foot is intruded is where?
That is in this area here,
Yeah,
That's where the,
and then in this corner here.
okay. All right.
Yeah, that was primarily driven by the altered location of the flags that we talked about earlier, this lower right-hand corner.
Okay. That brings up a point, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, it says, "The commission may waive any of our specifications, performance standards, regulations, et cetera, providing there are no reasonable conditions or alternatives that will allow the proposed activity to proceed in compliance, and that avoidance, minimization, and mitigation have been employed to the maximum extent feasible, and that the waiver is necessary to accommodate a public interest." So I think what they mean by that is, we mean public interest with respect to the Riverfront and the function of the riverfront and stuff like that. So the waiver request needs to address those three issues, and I think you have, but I think, okay, maybe it's in there. I looked at all the other stuff, I didn't look at your waiver request.
Yeah, we went through the performance standards, specifically, section 21.9D of the wetland bylaws. So we referenced that throughout this, and
Did you reference our bylaw?
yes,
Perfect. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
All right, anything else? All right, so the next meeting is September
Right through the second.
12th.
I forgot, this is two separate things.
September 12th. And there's a few things I think you have, I know you wrote them down to respond to. Will we be in a position to issue on that date, John, in your opinion?
You can certainly have a draft ready.
Okay, so we'll plan, it sounds like we're going to plan to close an issue at the next meeting. Do you need some kind of note sent to the planning board? Are they involved with this?
Yes, we've met with them, and there's another meeting with them
Next Thursday.
next Thursday.
Could we get a note to them before their meeting, John? Okay.
Great. Thank you.
All right, so we all set?
Do we want to do the other site?
Are you next on the agenda?
I believe so.
Okay, you guys are hard to get rid of.
This one's easy. I think I only have 2 slides for this site, because the changes were much smaller.
I meant that only in the nicest way, by the way, just so you don't take it wrong.
All right, I assume you have to do a reading, right?
Yeah, next item on the agenda is item 8, 10 Grant Meadow Road, notice of intent, Town of Burlington, DPW. They are demolishing the existing structure and constructing new parks and recreation and DPW maintenance facility. It's DEP file number 122-630.
Okay,
So,
thank you. Again, Jeff Alberti from Weston and Sampson, and Tony Westphizer. So I'm going to jump right to our supplemental information package number 1, dated 8/7/19, for 10 Great Meadow Road. I'm going to jump ahead to page 2. So page 1 provides you a summary of the plans that were updated. Page 2 gets into a description of some of the changes. Starting with probably the most significant comment, albeit it wasn't a major issue for us. This is the overall plan that was presented at the last meeting. And I've just outlined in red on the right-hand side the stilling basin. And there was a request for us to look at that to see if we could reduce it and reduce the impact to tree removal in that area. So as you watch the screen change, you can see that area circled in red that it was originally proposed, and you can see that we've been able to reduce that to the maximum extent practical to reduce the impacts to that area. So that's been accommodated, and that's included in the plans. We've also gone through and put together a landscaping plan similar to the one that was shown for the other site, using native species. We made a comment on page 2, just similar to the other site, that the management of catch basin cleanings and street sweepings will not take place at the site, and that we would correct any notes referencing compost filter tubes and removing any reference to the fertilizer and sodium chloride. We will add to the documents the notification of spills to include the health department and conservation. On page 3, we made the modification to the storm scepter 450I. Also on page 3, we talk about the low impact development again, some of the issues that have been previously discussed, including the landscaping plan, minimizing some of the stormwater management systems by going underground, so we limit our disturbance. We also have gone out and conducted a survey of the wetland flags on this site as well, and didn't have any significant changes there. And again, we should have submitted everything double-sided printed. that's a summary, and I'll open it back up to any questions you might have.
Okay. John, any comments on this one?
No, the only comment is that I have not checked the wetland flags on this. But other than that, no issues. Certainly check them within the next week, but
Chances
I don't
are,
anticipate-
due to the topography, I suspect there will not be many changes, is that?
Right.
Okay. If any at all? Okay. All right. I don't have a recollection of any other issues.
So you had to actually reconfigure the infiltrator to accommodate the smaller outfall basin?
Just the outlet structure.
Okay.
Does anyone on the commission have any recollection of any other issues that came up?
No, I think the problem because it's the second one.
What?
I think because it was the second one that was presented, we were worn out.
You're not supposed to admit that.
No, we did talk about low impact drainage, didn't we? Whether there was any possibility for that on the site, LIDs. I had a note on it.
So they do address it.
It's actually in the minutes, I thought. I have
What
here,
was that, Gail,
the
about?
Conservation Committee discussed using low-impact design standards.
Yeah, I have a note here that says you folks were going to look at that.
With regard to the stormwater, or was this, I'm trying to remember the actual comment, if it was, I think there was a suggestion about trying to take the stormwater in the front and do some rain gardens. Through that process, what we find is, because it's a higher potential pollutant load, we couldn't get the treatment before, I think it's 44% before you start recharging. And as a result, we were unable to do that, but we did, again, provide some landscaped areas to improve on versus the hard surface. So we've minimized it to the maximum extent that we could.
So just a reminder, at some point in the next 3 years, 5 years, the town is going to have to do a demonstration, an LID project for our NIPD's permit. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be this project, but it's going to have to be on some municipal property, so just keep that in mind. It's a requirement.
Gail, anything further?
Not that I can recall.
I had a note, something about, does anyone remember this, John? We talked about containing street sweepings. I wrote that down, but I don't.
Yeah, so they said they're going to do, store the street sweepings and catch basin cleanings at Grant Avenue, not at either of these
Right.
sites.
Oh, okay,
Salt
all
shed.
right. All right. And something about no fertilizers was a comment?
Correct. Yep. We
Not
had
if
some of
this-
that in our
One in plan.
standard language, so we've removed
Okay.
that.
Okay. And something about look at reducing the overflow discharge?
Yep. I believe that was.
That's that area there?
That area there, correct.
Okay, all right. Anyone else may take any notes on anything particular? All right, is there anyone in the audience for this? So again, we're looking at probably September 12th to close the hearing and issue. And again, we'll send a note to the planning board on this one.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and your.
All right, thank you for your responses, appreciate it.
No problem.
Very good.
What did she say? Oh, look at you. Sidewalk page, look at- oh.
By the way, it was a nice job being responsive to all the issues.
Oh, thank you. I'll have to give all these other guys the credit. They did it all.
Very good.
September 12th, right? It's okay.
Okay, next on the agenda is a continued public hearing, notice of intent. It's the Burlington Mall Road sidewalk along the roadway between the Sears, old Sears building, which is not there anymore, and Middlesex Turnpike. The project is a Town of Burlington project to install a sidewalk DEP file number 122-631.
How could you possibly say that you've been here since 7? Aren't you like ready to put them out of there?
Practice my patience.
Good evening.
Hello again.
Hello
Jocelyn
again.
Meyer, civil engineer with VHB, here on behalf of the applicant, which is the town of Burlington. So, since the last time we were here, we had a subcommittee meeting this past Tuesday. And then I submitted this morning a letter to the commission going through all of the comments that we received at the last hearing, as well as the additional comments that we received at the subcommittee meeting. And I will run through that, because I'm sure most of you haven't had time to read that. So at the subcommittee meeting, we started off by just rerunning through the discussion points that we had about this, putting the sidewalk on the north side of Burlington Mall Road. There was no new discussion with that, and I just have a summary in the letter summarizing all of the discussions that we had at the previous hearing. We were asked to look at vegetative slope options. Simon Property Group agreed to have Haley and Aldridge, a geotechnical engineer, weigh in on that. And they looked at two alternatives, the first being using a geogrid fabric that would be installed in layers throughout the slope. A few issues that they pointed out with that being that this matting, the sewer line that runs in this area, you'd have to dig up the matting if you ever needed to maintain that sewer line. And then also another consideration that they had was vertical pins. What that consisted of was about 3-inch diameter pins that would be nailed into the soil at a 5x5 grid. Both of these treatments would have a slope stabilization mat that would allow that to be planted with seed. But both of these methods would have to be constructed from the wetland side versus Burlington Mall Road, which is what we're currently proposing to do with the riprap slope. So that would obviously have additional impacts to the wetland. And then again, the point that I had mentioned about if the sewer line ever needed to be repaired, you're compromising the stability of the slope to access that sewer line. A suggestion was made to review the possibility of installing a boardwalk, a wooden boardwalk system, to avoid having to touch the slope altogether. After our subcommittee meeting, DPW provided an email saying that they are not in support of a wood boardwalk structure from maintenance issues. They can't really snow plow it, and then also it would have a shorter lifespan. So we didn't look into that anymore, as DPW prefers to have a traditional concrete sidewalk with granite curbing. Lastly, the commission asked us to stake out the bottom of the riprap slope so that the commission members could walk that to see if there's an opportunity to plant any trees between the wetland edge and the proposed limits of riprap. Simon has agreed to do that, and I will update the commission once that's been completed. I anticipate hopefully next week that the contractor will have that done.
So did I read, though, that Simon has not agreed to plant the trees?
We need to have discussions between the planning department and Simon. Unfortunately, they weren't actually able to connect on the phone today to have that discussion, so I really don't have an update on that. But there's hope, or there's an opportunity that planning may be able to contribute some of those funds. But again, I can't.
So actually,
Say one thing or
I
the
spoke to
other.
Kristen this evening before the meeting, said that she did talk to them, and she felt that they were willing, Simon was willing to pay for some of the trees, and her department would figure out how to get the rest of the money, so.
If there is room.
Right, I mean, that's the thing, I mean, if,
All right. All right, so who wrote the memo that, for DPW? John, did you write the memo for DPW?
We did
And why is it that you don't want to take care of the boardwalk? Or what is the problem?
this. So, Mole Road, as well as any other sidewalk in town, we just talked about sidewalks earlier,
Yeah.
is something that we maintain with equipment, not by hand. We actually plow and snow blow all those areas in town. That's one of the roads that we actually handle. We do about 31 miles of sidewalks in town. So we can't bring the type of equipment on a boardwalk without eventually damaging the boardwalk. And number one. Number two, the lifespan of any type of boardwalk is not as long as a concrete sidewalk. So we prefer that for the long term and for the use that it'll receive, and that's why we're not in favor of doing that on an area next to a road, per se.
That's not to say, so in what areas might you be in favor of a boardwalk?
Well, like, for instance, we have, I'm not gonna call it a boardwalk, but we have access to one of our wells in the aquifer that is through a type of walk like this, but we don't maintain with this type of equipment because we don't need the access and we don't have the traffic, the foot traffic that we get. So areas like that we will see, I mean, is more suitable than on the side of the road particularly.
So a boardwalk that would be accessible, say, 3 seasons per year, would be much more acceptable because you don't have the issue of the snow and clearing it and stuff like that.
It may be more, yeah, in general, but again, for us, for the type of maintenance that we give, we just don't think is suitable for the type of work we do.
I see. Okay, so let's see if there's any comments. Some of us were at the subcommittee meeting. See if there's any questions. Gail,
Just looking over my notes.
want me to come back to you?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Jennifer, put you on first.
I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay. Ed,
Still reading them too.
what's that?
I'm reading the minutes too.
Okay. John? No comments. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we've been either too expensive or no feasibility to maintain the boardwalk type of thing. So I think that, you know, if we see where the wetland line is and see if we can get some trees in there. And so then the retaining wall was a problem with the sewer, right?
Correct.
But we also have the option to not approve this, correct?
Yeah, I was going to say, just speaking for myself, without the trees to restore the function and value of, it's Riverfront, right? Under the
bylaw.
Under the bylaw, I would have a serious question whether to vote for it without the trees replacing that shade value and the habitat value.
And there also, I mean, there needs to be some improvement to this riverfront, and there's pretty, there's none at this point.
Yeah, the Riverfront regulations require an improvement to the habitat value, as you know.
Yep.
You're going to have to give that some thought, because if we can't meet the regulations, I don't see how it's permittable, at least for my one vote. Okay. Anybody else comment?
I think, I agree. I mean, it needs to show improvement to the riverfront.
Was the proposed, could I just ask a question? I'm sorry, I missed the subcommittee meeting earlier this week, but was the proposed boardwalk to go over the Riverwalk area?
No, it wouldn't, you wouldn't have to, you could kind of, you know, have like an elevated platform, so you wouldn't have to disturb as much. It would be the same place.
Okay. Would that be ADA compliant?
It would have to be.
I mean, yeah,
designed that
that's,
way, yes.
yeah. Because I know you had mentioned something about if a 3-season boardwalk would be more amenable to the DPW, but if it's not
But I think he
ADA
meant
compliant.
in other parts of town.
Oh, no, okay, I see what you're saying, so.
Okay, any other issues from anyone? There's no one in the audience for it. Yes. Sure, please do.
This is just, again, going back to sidewalks and for the town on the master plans that the town may have. There are many links in town we were talking about earlier in a different project. We also talked about Terrace Hall, we're gonna be closing a gap where we're missing sidewalks. And this is one of those gaps. This is a major gap where we have major sidewalks. Actually, the Middlesex Turnpike has sidewalks the entire length of the road right now with the last couple of projects we completed. And the Mole Road has sidewalks for most of the length of Mole Road except for this section. So this is the one link that we're missing to allow people to safely cross the turnpike, safely cross the Mole Road through traffic signals and pedestrian lighting, and then actually be able to access, Coles we talked earlier, or Wendy's, or the mall. So it's a project that the town has looked at it for many years, and I think there's a great opportunity to actually finish this link. So speaking on the project itself and not so much the wetlands regulations, which I don't quite understand, but so I wanted to speak on that part, that this is the one link that we are able to actually cross people from this side of the town to the other side where we have all the businesses and
Yeah.
restaurants and everything that we have.
There's no question that it's very much needed. There's no question about that. If the commission determined that this was not permittable because it didn't comply with the regulations, then I think the only alternative would be the other side of the road.
Again, I don't know what the regs are, but I just wanted to,
Yeah.
so we talk about gaps, this is one of them.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
So you have to show improvement to the riverfront. So I think what we're saying is unless there's improvement to the riverfront and the trees are able to be planted, which quite frankly, I read that Simon property can't pay for the trees, but we're holding, all kinds of tens of thousands of dollars
Well, they
things
can't
for them.
commit
So
to
they
it
can't
at
commit
this
to
point
it.
until
So
they had the conversations.
yeah,
with
so
us.
that seemed a little silly to me, but that's my opinion, whatever. But is there the option for us to ask them to improve Riverfront elsewhere to make up for
Within the-
this particular?
Well, we originally asked that question about improving the riverfront to other parts of the project area more generally. And the quick answer was no, but I'm wondering if they could take another look at that.
I think the regulations pertain to the site
The
of
specific project.
disturbance.
Yeah, the site, but I mean, John, any comments at all?
Well, once again, so it's a bylaw regulation, so you've got a lot more flexibility in how you interpret it or enforce your bylaw than if it were a state riverfront area. And it's arguably eligible to even be a limited project as a road widening project, which would give you more flexibility. It wasn't filed as such, but it potentially could have been, which would give you flexibility on, strictly enforcing the regulations. So it's, I think it really comes down to whether or not it can be mitigated here on this site, rather than trying to find some other site to mitigate it.
Plus, I'm not sure, if a lot of things that the applicant or the person the company is paying for this is not willing to do, I'm not sure they're going to be willing
Right.
to
Well, they do have other
mitigate
riverfront,
somewhere else.
Vinebrook flows around their property on the other side too,
Yeah.
or that might be on Macy's property, actually.
Right.
But, this is a stream that flows into the well field, so the more you can protect it here at this location, right across the street from the Great Meadow, the better. So, I think the first thing to do is to look and see whether or not you can mitigate, once it's staked out, whether you can actually mitigate the impacts. You may be able to. The slope isn't that heavily vegetated, the existing slope that's going to be cleared. It's got vegetation, but it's not really dense. So, planting, 15 or 20 large trees that'll grow into large shade trees may actually be an improvement for the resource area, if they fit.
So it seems like getting the trees in would be a key to getting it possible. So if we can work towards that goal, I think we might have a positive result. I don't know, but I can't say how everyone will vote, but we might have a positive result.
Is there a a number of trees or spacing that the commission would want to see? I know a 25-foot spacing was thrown out at the subcommittee meeting. Is there flexibility in that to increase the spacing if that is more palatable for both Simon and the planning department?
Well, the issue is what's being planted that would, in a reasonable time, generate the appropriate shade cover that is necessary to promote the habitat. Keep it cool, keep it cool.
And also, once it's staked out and we walk that area, we evaluate how many large trees are already in that strip. I mean, we want to then fill in the gaps in that strip, basically. So it's hard to just come up with a number until we
Because
actually.
there might be trees already there.
Correct.
So it may not be, we're talking about
yeah.
the added trees.
Okay.
All right, how does that sound? We're not there quite yet, but we might be.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. All right.
When is it
Yeah.
likely to be staked?
I'm hoping next week, but I will confirm that and let you both know.
Of course. Of course, Simon does want something from the town, all those liquor licenses. Not that there's a quid pro quo, but they are certainly looking for a lot of liquor licenses.
Okay.
Okay. I was just joking. Okay. And besides, I don't think the selectmen are watching, so.
Somebody will
Okay.
tell them now.
All right. So next meeting is September 12th. So if we got the input prior to that meeting, that would be very helpful. Do you think we can get all of this done in time for to close on the first meeting or the second meeting in September?
Oh, the first meeting. That's 5 weeks away.
Yeah, she could.
So we might be able to get the site walk done, get the feedback from you, your client, and get agreement on the number of trees and that it could be funded as a project.
Yep.
And then we could close an issue if that was the case,
Okay.
possibly if everyone's in favor of it. Right?
Well, I think we can, move it to that and if, make some decision, sure.
Right, right. Okay, so we'll see what happens.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good evening. All right. That was item 9. Item 10 is planning board comments. It sounds like, do we need to, on the sidewalk, do we need to convey this to the planning board at all?
No, they don't have a filing for that.
They don't have anything.
There was a requirement that this be done as part of their, the Sears Auto approval.
Okay. And then we have subcommittee and staff reports. Is there anything?
So there was a subcommittee meeting, and I distributed draft minutes. Are you in the position to approve the draft minutes for the subcommittee?
I'm okay.
Yep.
I read them. Motion to approve? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor? This was the meeting of this past Tuesday for the date.
About the sidewalk.
What?
It was about the sidewalk.
Fine.
Okay, the next meeting is September 12th. The next meeting of that is September 26th. If you're not going to be around as a commissioner, let the office know. Other business?
I just shout out to the Boy Scouts. They've been putting up trail maps for the conservation land, and they're doing a really good job, and also have been adding some things that may facilitate some people taking more advantage of the trails by having benches where you can sit down, that kind of thing.
At Sawmill.
Yeah, but
Are
they,
these maps,
well, in other places too.
are these maps on the web?
They're posted at the head of the trail.
At
And
the
they
head.
have mileage on it too, so if you want to do a fitness route, you can plan a route to, do a loop, that kind of thing.
Very good.
You have your summer help out cleaning up sides of roads and whatnot.
Well, streams.
Streams.
They're out our way. They did a pretty good job, you know, for what they did.
All right.
Did you want to talk about the CPA? The money,
About what?
the budget?
The CPA budget?
Beauty Preservation Act.
They moved to pass the increase.
What's that?
They moved to pass the increase of the State House.
Oh, yes. I was drawing a blank. All right, the
Retweeted it.
fiscal year '20 budget was signed at the State House, and there was provisions in there that made it through conference committee of our state senate and our House of Representatives. And the provision was, this happened very recently, that there was a raise, first raise in 20 years to the fees at the Registry of Deeds that is going to allow for increased matching funds for communities that have adopted the Community Preservation Act. For those people who are not aware of what that is, there's 175 communities in the Commonwealth, most of them surrounding Burlington, not everyone, but most of them. And they have adopted through a ballot question vote, they have adopted a 1 to 3% surcharge on their taxes. So for money that is put aside and can only be spent on open space, active recreation facilities, historic preservation, and affordable housing. Many people feel that these four things, these four areas, are the things that define quality amenities in a community, and they're often the areas that sometimes towns don't have the funds because other things like fire and police and municipal services take precedent as a priority for funds. And so in doing this, this is a law that was created in 2000. The state provides an incentive that if the town is willing to collect these funds, and the average homeowner, it would be $75 more per year for the average house in Burlington, that we would be able to set aside at 1.5% surcharge, it would be $1.4 to $1.5 million per year, dedicated for open space, recreation projects. It's for active recreation equipment, boardwalks, bike paths, things of that nature, restoring or acquiring historic homes. We could do something with the Stone Cottage on Middlesex, I think it's on Middlesex Turnpike. And we could possibly even create more affordable housing units for our residents. In addition to that, so the governor actually signed that legislation. It's been a 13-year effort to get the state of Massachusetts to make this change. It has now been codified as part of law now, and it has raised the state match to probably a minimum of 25% is what it is, and maybe 28%. In the same budget for this next fiscal year, Governor Baker also put in that he said, if there is a surplus in our state budget, I am going to add $20 million to that fund. And as a result of adding $20 million, we could end up with communities getting a state match as high as 43% of the state match. So essentially, you put in $1 and you get, the town collects $1, you get 43 cents. If the town collects $1.5 million, the town gets about a check in November of $600,000, whether or not we actually do a project that year. So this was a very significant piece of news and provides even a stronger incentive for the town to adopt the Community Preservation Act. There is a citizens committee that is devoted to lobbying for this. It is called Vote Yes CPA Burlington, and John Sachs is chairing it, and Monty Pearson, both town meeting members. He is the treasurer, Monty Pearson, and you can contact that folks if you'd like more information. There is a plan by this citizens group to try to get it on to a warrant article for the January town meeting, to have town meeting consider whether they want to put it to our voters to a vote. And then it would go the following November. It would appear in the November presidential election as a ballot question, and our citizens would get a chance to vote on it. The one issue that people have with such a proposal, as always, is there are people in the community who are now on fixed income, and they can't afford this. The law provides the ability of some exemptions. People who are considered fitting within the definition of low income from the federal government, they can choose to waive paying the increase. Seniors who fall as high as what is considered moderate income, a family of 2 seniors would be at something like actually $86,000. It's a pretty high limit. They too, if they feel they can't afford it, they could waive the $76. There is also the business community we're thinking of, where this law allows for the first $100,000 of evaluation for business property and residential property. So the point is that adopting the Community Preservation Act perhaps lets people who are most vulnerable in our community, whether it's a small business owner or someone that has a small home on fixed income, allows it to be sensitive so they can perhaps even not pay it if it's meaningful to them. So if you have any questions, you can certainly contact the commission, and I'll be happy to respond to those questions in the community. If you would like to contact the Citizens Committee and find out more about their plans, you can contact John Sachs, he's a town meeting member, or Monty Pearson as a town meeting member. Either of them would be happy to respond to your questions. Okay, any comments?
Was that the article that had to be submitted by the 9th? Or is that something different?
Pardon?
The thing you sent out here, town meeting, electronic.
Oh, that's
submission.
warrant articles.
That's the general.
Yeah, that's just.
That was a
the commission
deadline
doesn't have
about
any-
warrant articles, and that's for the September town meeting. We're talking about January.
Got it.
Okay, so we're a little bit ways away. I should point out that I know the Citizens Committee has plans to contact town meeting members, send them information, give them an opportunity to ask questions, educate them, and make sure that they're totally familiar with what the Community Preservation Act is. Okay, anything further? Motion to adjourn the meeting, please? Second. Anyone in favor? 500.